Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, GLC 30A.
This conference will now be recorded.
Thank you. Section 20 and the Governor's March 15, 2020 order imposing strict limitations on the number of people that may gather in one place. This meeting of the Harwich Cultural Council is being conducted via remote participation. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings as provided for in the order. A reminder that persons who would like to listen or view this meeting while in progress may do so by logging in as specified above on the agenda. So that is our call to order. And just because we've got a couple of new folks, because the open meeting law, we're all meeting remotely. So this is something I have to read at the beginning of every meeting because we do have to specify that. So we've called to order. We're going to move into public comments and announcements. I don't see anybody. Any announcements from anyone on the council? Anything you want to announce? Bernadette?
I just mentioned that I did set up a Instagram account for the council and a Twitter account, and we've got almost 60 followers on Instagram.
Wow!
At this point, and I had put the virtual candlelight dinner and the extended deadlines for the grant applications on there. So hopefully it's another venue that we'll reach more people with. So that's good.
Wonderful. Thank you. I'll be number 61 because I will follow that as soon as we end our meeting today.
Okay.
Thank you for doing that. Anybody else? All right, seeing none, let's move into the next item on our agenda, which is to welcome our new Cultural Council members. Now, last month, Sharon did join us, but it was a little, you hadn't been sworn in at that point, so you were just an observer last time. Now you're official, and Peter's official. So I want to welcome Sharon Moore and Peter Hollis, who are new to our council, and I would love to give both of you an opportunity to introduce yourself, and then we'll just go around the room and introduce ourselves. So Sharon, why don't we start with you?
Okay, so as of 3:30 today, I was sworn in, so it was took me a little while to get into town hall. I'm a teacher in Bourne, and I have been teaching there for over 20 years. I've lived in Harwich since 1997. My kids went to Harwich Elementary, and I'm just very excited to be part of the Cultural Council. I don't know what else I said last time. Probably sounded more interesting.
That's okay. We're glad to have you, Sharon. Thank you and welcome. And Peter.
Thank you.
Well, my ties go back to my dad buying a cottage in Dennisport in 1950. One of the reasons he bought it was so that my mother could rendezvous with her classmates from Hyannis Normal School, class of 28. So I have a perspective on the Cape that goes back quite a way via my mother. Spent summers here while not in school, worked at a number of different places, summer jobs, Corsetti's Market down in Dennisport, Daggett's Elm Farm Market, which is over wherever the Ocean State Job Lot is now, and was part of the original crew at the Pancake Man in South Yarmouth many years ago. Went to Bates College. Following that, I was at Tufts University School of Dental Medicine, graduated from there in 1967, was married and commissioned in the Navy in the same week. I married my wife, Susan Hollis. She graduated that same week from Rhode Island School of Design as a textile designer. And I found while I was in dental school and she was at Rhode Island School of Design, it was far more fun hanging out with RISD art students than with fellow dentists. Following my commission, I was stationed at Great Lakes, Illinois, and then was assigned to the 1st Marine Division in Da Nang, Vietnam, arrived during the Tet Offensive and spent 369 days in Vietnam. It was a leap year, got an extra day in there, plus some time. Spent the majority of my tour doing what was called civic action, treating Vietnamese civilians. The city of Da Nang at the time had a 500,000 population and only one university-trained dentist. And I basically did oral surgery, went out in the field. We used Novocaine and extracted teeth. And I decided I never wanted to be an oral surgeon and spend all my time taking teeth out. Following my separation from active duty, I joined a gentleman in Stoughton, Massachusetts, and we set up a group family practice, a general dentist. And for 40 years, I did that and then retired. My wife's father had built a small house on Hinckley's Pond in the mid-50s. And upon my wife inheriting the property, we took down the old cottage and designed and built the home we're currently occupying. And we've been here now 12 plus years. So that gives you kind of a picture of who I am, what I've done. Complete.
Absolutely. And welcome. And I just appreciate, I know I've met your wife a few times to the Cape Cod Museum of Art and some of the work I've done over there. So welcome. So we'll take just 30 seconds, a minute or so for each of us just to introduce ourselves. And Dinah, we'll go with you.
Okay. I'm a lifelong summer resident of the Cape, and we built a house here 10 years ago in Harwich, and also had lived in Harwich previously. Went full-time 4 years ago, so I'm a full-time resident here, and I am involved in the Open Players, which is a group of disabilities on the Cape. I direct them in better times, not during COVID, doing musical theater. After a long lifetime of doing theater, as well as being a family therapist. So I had also previously served on a cultural council in Watertown, Mass. For many years, and I was the co-president of that, as well as the past coordinator, Performing Arts Student Series coordinator. So been in the arts for a long time and enjoy it very much. I'm also a reporter with Channel 18.
Thank you, Dinah. Wonderful. Bernadette, we'll go to you.
Hi, I'm at my, I think, 3rd meeting. So every time she wants to introduce new members, I still think I'm one of you. I'm an artist and an art educator at Monomoy Regional High School. I am an artist in residence at the Cultural Center, the old middle school. I literally have my studio in what used to be my vice principal's office. Taught at, performed at the junior theater through the years ago. So I've got a background in a number of areas of the arts and a love for it, and had taken a few years off in the 35 that I've lived here. For a while there, did a master's degree and stepped off a lot of boards, and all of a sudden I realized I'd kind of been away from it for too long, so got myself back involved in another term on the Brooks Free Library Trustees Board, which I served on for a number of years ago, and then joined the Cultural Council this summer. So happy to be here.
Thank you, Bernadette. Chris Banks, we'll move to you.
Hey. Hi, I'm Chris Banks, as some of you know. My history here is my mom and dad moved here when I got married 52 years ago and opened what is now the Cape Sea Grill. So we've been coming down for a number of years visiting, and then we said we've got to retire here. So when we came down in 2000, I had decided to set up my painting, which I've been painting now for 40 years. So I then became involved in the Harwich Guild of Artists, president of that for several years. First of all, I was the guild director for 8 years for the Guild Art Gallery. And then, so I've been involved, you know, in the art thing. So this is a natural transition to come to the Harwich Cultural Council.
Thank you, Chris. Charlie?
Well, welcome, Bill and Sharon, and hello, colleagues. I got to the Cape. I actually came from Berlin, Germany, in the early 50s, and my father had worked for the U.S. government there and taught at the Free University of Berlin, and he wanted to retire and write books. So he looked for a place that would present that environment for him, and we found a beautiful home down on Red River Beach, and we spent 3 years building the house, getting things, getting acclimated, and my father turned out 5 or 6 books here. Later became a writer in residence at a school in Connecticut. I grew up here like many other young fellows, playing Little League, delivered papers all the way up the hill to the little Episcopal church on the top of the hill on Route 28. Had many, many adventures in all parts of Harwich and its environs, some of which I can't go into. But at any rate, I was here probably summers after 1962 until my mother retired in the early 70s. And then my family, we vacationed here and got a taste of just about everything that happened, if I can use the term culturally. I had a business in Albany, New York, which I retired from in 2018. And I asked my children, would you like to visit us in Albany, New York, or would you prefer the Cape? So that was a no-brainer, and that's how we ended up living here permanently. I've always been interested in the arts. My mother was a professional portrait painter. My father, as I said, was a writer, but he was also an actor on Broadway in the 30s, so had an extensive theatrical background. I did my duty at the Harwich Junior Theater when Betty was the director there, and learned a whole lot about the stage and theater arts. I've always enjoyed art. I'm a musician. I guess you'd say a frustrated jazz guitarist, but I have many links to Harwich, and I've really enjoyed this group of people because we're putting forward some ideas that I think can really take flight now, as long as we do our homework and figure out the virtual world, which I think many of you have already, proven that you're pretty astute in that area. So, I think we have a lot of challenges ahead, particularly with what's going on here. And I think there's an old Japanese saying that none of us are as good as all of us. And I think that in harmony here, we can encourage particularly the younger people who are really more adept at the virtual world to, show us how it can be done. I see this as like a flower that's blooming now. Out of every dark cloud, there's always a silver lining, and I can see just on a daily basis the emails I get, one thing or another. We've turned a corner here, and I think we're moving ahead. So that should tell you enough about me.
Thank you, Charlie. Thank you very much. And I'm Tina Games, Chair of the Harwich Cultural Council. I was appointed to the Cultural Council in July of 2015. So I am term limited and will be stepping off the council at the end of June 2021. And we moved here, my husband and 2 kids, from the Washington, D.C. area in August of 2012. And I am the chair of the Monomoy Regional School Committee. I'm also the chair of the Cape and Islands Commission on the Status of Women, as well as the chair of this wonderful council. So very, very involved. I mean, from the minute I stepped on Kate, I just jumped in. That's what we did in DC, and that's what I do here. So I'm also the managing director of Eventide Theater Company over in Dennis Village. And in addition to that, I'm a freelance writer. And I also work with highly creative women all over the world who are in transition, helping them put voice to their work, helping them bring themselves, the visibility of themselves and their work into the world. So I've kind of been in the creative realm for a really long time, working primarily with women, and just delighted to be a part of this group. And it'll be a bittersweet moment on June 30th of 2021, but we're getting there. So anyway, welcome everybody, and let's move to the next item of business, the approval of the October 8th, 2020 meeting minutes. Could I have a motion to approve? All right, Chris has moved to approve. Can I have a second? And Bernadette has seconded. And we're going to do a roll call vote. So, Peter, you weren't with us last time. Sharon, you were. But because we're remote, we have to go around and do a roll call vote for every thing that we vote on. So you're going to say your name and aye or nay. And Peter and Sharon, since you weren't part of us last month, you don't have to vote. So I'm just going to skip over you for this particular vote. So anyway, so the motion's on the floor and we're just going to say yay or nay. So Dinah?
Yay.
All right, Bernadette?
Yay.
Thank you, Charlie.
Yay.
Chris?
Yay.
And I am a yay, so that is unanimous. The October 8th meeting minutes are approved. So moving into old business. So the status of the 2021 grant recipients. First of all, I want to thank Dinah and Charlie who stepped up and gave me a hand. And we ended up following up with everybody that we haven't heard from yet, just to kind of get a feeling for where we were. And I just wanted to let you know that everybody right now, let me just count real quickly. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So we have 10 outstanding grants that have not put their reimbursement form in or have indicated that they're not, so we actually had a couple of cancels. Let me just announce who those were. I think I shared this last time, but for everybody else that's joined us. One of them was the Monomoy Regional actually it was the middle school. They had to cancel a field trip. So that actually is not going to happen. So that money will stay in our account for next time. And then the other one that canceled, unfortunately, was also Monomoy Regional Middle School. It was May the Forces Be With You. And that was a science fair that they were actually going to bring into the school, and it cannot happen, unfortunately. So we had 2 cancellations, and everybody else we did make contact with, and we actually have another one. Chase Library is on its way. So they've completed their event and they've got the paperwork. It's on its way to us, but it's not been recorded. So that is one of the 10. And everybody else, and Charlie and Dinah, again, thank you. Everybody else, I think, is either waiting until the spring, fingers crossed, to try to do an in-person event, or they're making some plans to do something virtually. But they haven't actually had their event yet. So they requested an extension to the end of June. So that is where we are. Any questions? Dinah?
Well, it's not, but I did hear, I had reported to you the people with whom I spoke, and there were 3 of those. 2 of them said that their application for a change was forthcoming, and the other said he had completed but hadn't let us know yet. I did just hear from the last one, and he had some questions about what's possible and would like to speak to me about possibilities of doing something.
Okay.
So, I'm just wondering what would be the appropriate thing to tell him in terms of timing. And it's the Movimento project. It is a dance troupe, and he's wondering about whether there's any chance to present at the cultural center. I have not yet gotten back to him, but he would like to talk about possibilities of some kind of virtual interaction if there's any way to gather the public for that. So I don't know if anyone has any ideas or thoughts about how to move forward with him.
All right, so here's what I'm going to suggest. And of course, this is a group decision, but I think certainly we can have a conversation and make suggestions, but he is the grant recipient. And by now, I think it's really up to him to try to make a decision on something. It's really not up to us. I know that the Mass Cultural Council, we can certainly point him in that direction. There's lots of people doing things. There's some good examples, but at this point, I really think the grant recipients need to step it up a little bit and not really depend on us to figure this out for them. That's how I feel about it. Anybody else?
I agree.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
I think he probably wants to brainstorm with someone. And I wouldn't feel that if I contact him, that I would be trying to solve his problem. But I do feel it's important to speak with him and to see what he has in mind and give him suggestions of where he might go. But really, I guess with the latest schedule change, do we still have the same schedule? Everything has to be done still by June.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we really cannot go beyond June. Yeah.
When do they need to resubmit a new proposal by?
Right.
What for that?
Yeah, so what you could tell him, I mean, he could certainly, what was the one, Cape Cod Orchestra? I mean, there are some good examples out there of a lot of things. Eventide Theater Company is a good example. I'm happy to give him some links of what we've done virtually all year long. So we can provide him with some examples. If he doesn't think, did I freeze? If he doesn't think he can do it, then what might happen, if he can't do something by the end of June, he may just have to forfeit or cancel, and then he can reapply for the next cycle with a new idea. Yeah.
So is there a date by which he will submit a change in his proposal to us? Is that? For June, we can do that.
Well, actually, no, because it's not about a proposal by June. It's about having the event done. I would say January. I would probably, Dinah, say by the end of January. That still gives him 5 months, but I want to make it very clear that the event has to happen. Paperwork has to be submitted. But I think the end of June is probably okay. Not June. The end of January is probably okay to give him a bit of time. Yeah.
All right. I'll take care of the rest. It's fine. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Anything else? Yeah, and I think, Charlie made a really good point in his introduction, because, this virtual world has been a little scary for some of our artists and performers because they've never done it before. And, we're happy to have conversations with them. I think we all have, and I know I have. I actually gave a couple of ideas to people back in the summer. So, yeah, we're trying our best, but it's also on the grant recipient as well. Yeah. Yep. Any other questions? Okay. And let me just say this real quickly, because as I look at Peter, I'm thinking of his wife, Susan. There was somebody in Nantucket that actually, they had a project that they were supposed to do. It was a gallery of like paintings and things like that they had done. They actually did it virtually. And I attended, it was one of the Mass Cultural Council gatherings, the community gatherings that Ricky does. And I thought that was pretty clever. And this was an artist over on Nantucket that put all of her, paintings up, and then somebody came in and did like a Facebook Live. So there are ways that you can do these things. I just wanted to just mention that. All right, so let's move into our 2020 grant reception recognition. Oh, Diana, go ahead.
Yeah, I think because they are a dance troupe and they have done interactive things, that's really what he's asking about. Is there, I I'm sure he knows about presentations. Of course, I've seen a lot of theatrical presentations, but this is a dance group that does dancing with other people. And I think he's just sort of wondering whether there are options for that kind of thing, or if he thought that there was a participant list that might be interested in doing something like that online.
So here's another idea, because it's a dance troupe, and I think I saw somebody recently that did this in Brewster, but and this group just had 5 dancers, but they spread them out 6 feet apart, they had masks on, and somebody filmed them. So they still did whatever their beautiful performance was, and someone filmed them, and that was their production, and then they took that and shared it. So I don't know how big their group is, but they could probably look at something like that. I know that the Cape Cod Orchestra, and they had a whole big thing, and they actually paid for somebody to come in. But if it's a smaller troupe, then they could probably do something spaced out, and then just having even something, your phone, you could probably,
Or they can even do it separately. We've had that with our music teacher, did a whole song with her kids, and they all sang their parts at home. You might have seen like some Broadway reprisals of. So
he's worried about the internal process of creating this. It's more about is there an outlet or a place that would appreciate this that they could be presenting. That's what he's asking. So does anybody have any ideas about that?
So one possibility might be to reach out to Emily, who is the director of the Council on Aging. I know that she is collecting some, I guess, videos and things like that. They might appreciate that they could run that in a newsletter. They could, the Friends of the Council on Aging have been doing some activities, virtual activities. Yeah, so that might be something.
Any other ideas?
Anybody else? If I think of more, Dinah, I'll email you.
Okay, all right, great.
Yeah.
Anybody can do that.
Yeah, because another one of actually Charlie had spoken to him. I can't remember off the top of my head who it was. It might have been Signs of Spring. There was somebody that.
Yes, he's a folk singer. I think a la Pete Seeger, and I think he actually had worked with Pete. But he sings. He entertains children's groups and elderly with songs of historical note. Sort of a wash of American music, if you will, like the old the Stephen Foster songbook. And I had a very spirited email back and forth, and he's pretty much on board with everything in timely. So he'll have something, at least a finished product. But yeah, I was going to say that this COVID issue, we're plotting sort of an unknown course here. With all the delays, one thing or another. So I think we have to be fairly lenient. As you said, Tina, we need people to really understand that there's a timeline. And I think everybody's sort of standing in abeyance trying to figure out what's next.
Right. And he's, hold on one second, and he, Charlie, is working with Emily over at the Council on Aging.
Right, yeah, right.
So, right.
So, did you receive anything from Stefano, Andrew Buckley? Because when I spoke with him, he said he was sending it in. So
actually, Stefano has already submitted and has already gotten a reimbursement check, so he's good. Yep.
Okay.
Yep, he's good. I'm sorry, Donna, I'm having difficulty hearing you, so.
I was on the point of doing that when I spoke with him. I just wanted to know if he had gotten it in.
Yes, yep, he was right on it. I mean, the minute, I think after you spoke to him the next day, I got everything. So he was right on it. Yep. Yep. All right, anything else? Okay, so let's move into the grant reception recognition. So I put this on the agenda today because back in June, and this Sharon and Peter were before you joined us, and Bernadette before you even joined us, we were thinking we weren't sure in June whether or not we would be able to have our grant reception, because every year we always host a grant reception to recognize the recipients. And then they get a couple of minutes to stand up and tell everybody what they've done with the grant money or what they're intending to do, because some of them may not have done it at that point. And it was looking like we couldn't do anything this year. However, in June, we were talking about doing something virtually. So I kind of poked at Dinah earlier today just to see about the possibility, because it's not technically a meeting, but we're still a group and we would still have to post it as a meeting because we would be a quorum technically, but we're not really doing business, but we're hosting a reception. So I was thinking that if we could get access to a Zoom platform, that we could still have a virtual reception. So we could invite the recipients, we could pick a date and we could invite the recipients and hopefully, to see if they could be available that day and just have them come on and have them tell us, a couple of minutes of what they've done with grant money or what they intend to do if they haven't done it yet. We could invite, Board of Selectmen, a couple of those members. We could invite somebody from the Cape Cod Chronicle to join us, just to kind of have some type of reception without just throwing it to the wind and telling this particular group that we're not going to recognize them. So I wanted to throw that out. We don't have to make any decisions right now, but I did want to throw it out for you to think about, and maybe even a couple of you, if you wanted to take it in just a little subgroup and talk about it even further. So what are your thoughts about that?
I think it's a good idea.
Yeah. Sounds like a good idea.
And if we could coordinate or utilize Channel 18 to some degree, because I believe they have the technical expertise.
Well, I think the way that this would work, because we all, and not to knock, Channel 18 does a beautiful job, so this has nothing to do with Channel 18, but it has everything to do with GoToMeeting. And my concern with GoToMeeting, using the town's platform, we're really limited to their schedule, we're limited to their time, and we've had a lot of difficulties getting in and managing this platform. So I think what we could do, because Dinah had that wonderful interview with me on Zoom, and then you were able to record it and send it over to Channel 18. So that could be a possibility, Charlie, that we would host the reception in a Zoom room,
sure,
record it, and get that file over to Channel 18. Yeah. So it's just something for us to explore.
I'll have to pick my wife Cheryl's brains because she's hot in the Zoom category.
That would be great. I think Dinah was going to look into it also.
Okay.
Chris?
My question would be is if you have a number of people, grant recipients, you wouldn't want to have them all in the same room waiting to be interviewed or whatever, right?
Well, I've done a lot of Zoom things, and I can tell you, as long as because I've been in Zoom meetings that have been like 250 people. So I think what you would do is you would have some housekeeping in the beginning. Everybody would go on mute until they're called. And there is a way in Zoom that you've got a gallery view and a speaker view. So what we would do is we would set it to speaker. So when the person comes up, they would kind of be in the big screen. And then once they're done, then they're muted, and then the next person is called. Yes, Dinah?
Yes, I just want to clarify for Chris, when Tina speaks of room, she's not talking about physical room, she's talking about being in the Zoom room. Oh, so everyone has their own camera.
Okay.
Sorry, thank you. I totally missed that. Okay.
They're doing it out of their home, so they can't do their program. They can't do any dance thing or unless they do it out of their home. They're just going to.
But they're just telling you what they're doing or what they're planning on doing.
Right. Yeah. And Chris. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry, Donna. Go ahead.
I was just saying they could show some who's covered if they have video. nothing.
Yeah, yeah, we could, and Chris, you came, I think the last one and maybe the year before of the grant receptions. So it is possible. We'd have to really get it sorted out ahead of time. If anybody was showing a video or wanted to show something on the screen, there is a way. We just would have to make sure that the person coming is prepared, because what would happen in Zoom room is that we would make them a presenter for a little bit of time, and then they would take over the control, and then they could go and pull the video up. So there is a bit of stabbiness to it. So I would recommend, if anybody wanted to do that, that they really need to know what they're doing. Otherwise it could get a little messy. Yeah. And I could try, and I can just tell you real quickly, I did this for Mass Cultural Council, the state council, for Eventide Theater Company. We actually, the artistic director and myself, went on and showed something on their screen, and it was pretty easy to do. Once you just have to know what you're doing. Yeah. Yeah.
So
anyway.
When were you thinking? When are you thinking of the reception being?
Well, I wanted to throw it out to the group because we've extended this until June. So I would say I would like us to get through our next grant cycle. So I'm maybe thinking March, perhaps. Well, I'm trying to remember with our timeline. Probably maybe March, because then the next group is coming in and everything is going to be delayed anyway, which we'll talk about in just a second. So I think we could probably get away with doing this in March, maybe February, but I'll throw that out to the group. And if a couple of you wanted to get together and maybe talk through this, and I can join you, but I'm thinking it would be after our grant cycle, because I don't want to put too much on our plate right now. I want us to get through our grant cycle first. And then we can put our energy in March, because March might be kind of a quiet month for us anyway, March and April. So it could be something we could put our energy on.
Yeah, okay.
That's what I'm thinking.
I'm up for working on that with somebody.
Okay, thank you, Dinah. Anybody want to jump in and help Dinah out? Dinah, I'm happy to talk with you about it, because I have some thoughts in my head about it. And anybody else? But Dinah, just put you and me down for now, and if anybody else wants to join us, we can kind of talk through how we might want to do that. But it sounds like we're just in consensus that we definitely want to move in that direction, because I would really hate to say to this class, if you will, the class of 2020, they've already, that we can't recognize you. So it would make me feel good if we could recognize them in some way. All right. Moving on to membership recruitment, we have 2 vacancies. We have a maximum of 9, a minimum of 5. And I am going to say this publicly. We did have an applicant, a very good one, Nina Schessler over at Cape Cod Theater Company. Unfortunately, and I'm still trying to figure out what has happened, but they apparently are doing interviews in person in the morning at the Griffin Room, and it was just not something Nina could do. So Nina requested a virtual interview and was denied. So I'm going to have to figure out why that was. So I don't know why that was. But Nina is very eager to join us. She'd be a fantastic council member. But she's kind of getting caught up in that interview thing, and I don't really know what to do about it. I have spoken to the Board of Selectmen administration office, and basically was told that's just how they're doing them right now. So I'm going to have to stay on top of this to figure out, but they would not make an exception. So I'm just going to put that out there. We do have a candidate, but we just can't seem to get her interviewed. So I just wanted to let you know that.
Dare I say that's short-sighted?
Yeah. So if any of you, I don't think it hurts to just let anyone know. Ed McManus and Don Howell are on the interview committee. So if either of you know them, I don't think it would hurt to just send them an email. Let them know we have got a very good candidate. We would love for her to join us, but we understand there's a little bit of, conflict or something going on with the interview, and how can we fix that? I don't think it hurts. So I want to honor their process, but I think I guess I kind of, I don't know, in our virtual setting.
Because you're not even allowed to go in there without an appointment.
What?
Yeah.
I was just saying I would find it interesting because you're not even allowed to go in there without an appointment. So, you know, they're trying to reduce the amount of people in the building as it is. It would make sense to do something virtual.
Right. So for the three new people, did you all have to go in person?
Yes, I did. I made an appointment and I went up to the room. We were at least 10 foot apart, chatted back and forth, and you know, was not any hardship. I didn't feel I was exposing myself in any way to COVID.
It was quick.
Yeah.
And I teach from home on Monday, so that's why I was able to go in. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been able to do it because the other days I'm at work.
So it's a scheduling issue.
I didn't think about choice or not. For me, it was in the summer and it was fine. And, but the issue is I had applied a year ago, January, to be on the Cultural Council, 2 years coming up in January, was asked to and applied. And then someone from the office called one day and said, oh, they're doing the interviews. They want you at whatever time. And like Sharon, I was teaching and I can't just flex my schedule. And they just were like, oh, we'll get you to the next round. And they just dropped me out of it. Made no accommodation to have me later in the day or, you know, and I said, I'm happy to come in, you know, and I wrote to Mike McGaskill and I thought I wrote to Dawn. I don't know. I reached out to somebody who I thought was the liaison at the time and it just, maybe I didn't go to the right person. So the issue might be somewhere in the administrator's office, and I will definitely write to Ed and to Dawn, who interviewed me. And Dawn and I have both been involved in the junior theater with Nina from years ago. Yeah. So it doesn't really compute for me, and I think, you know, and it doesn't make sense in these times. We can't meet for meetings, we can't meet for anything else. How you can try to mandate that someone come in person for a meeting when obviously this works, especially when you're just going to meet two board of selectmen people, you know.
Well said. Yeah, no, that'd be unacceptable in my world.
Somewhere else, but for what it's worth, I'll get in touch with Ed and Dawn and see what happens.
Thank you.
This is the first time, and
I was
it was pre-COVID with me, so something just is getting dropped. A ball's getting dropped maybe somewhere.
Yeah. Dinah, thank you, Bernadette.
I was going to check in with Nina because I solicited her first. I tried. So I was thinking I would get in touch with her and find out exactly what her experience was before I checked. But if you want to do that, Bernadette, I'm happy to have you do it. I don't think you need to duplicate it.
No, I'm just saying I'm comfortable, you know, the two guys that interviewed me are the two people that I assume are still in charge of this, and I'm happy to, you know, send a letter. But you know what, Dinah, it's probably better to wait and see, you know, she was your nominee as you say, maybe, yeah, find out exactly from Nina first. So I don't want to jump the gun or anything, but
exactly.
You know, I'll write to my local representative if I need to.
All right.
So Dinah, I will share with you because Nina reached out to me to tell me that this had happened. So I actually heard it from Nina. And my understanding, and you can have a conversation, is she takes care of her grandson in the mornings. And 9:30, I think it was 9:30. It just didn't work with her taking care of her grandson, and she didn't feel comfortable bringing her grandson into town hall and asked for a virtual meeting and was denied.
I'll check it out.
All right. So anyway, so that is that on membership. So we do have somebody in the queue. We just need to get the process completed, and that would give us 8 members, and she would be fantastic. So hopefully this will work out somewhere. Sharon. Oh, and you're on mute.
I've also asked some people because I'm part of a long-standing book club. So some of them are in the Harwich Junior Theater and musicians. And one of my friends owns Merrill's Music. And so I've put some of that out and some people were a little bit interested. We'll see.
Great. Thank you, Sharon. Thank you. Yes, and we have the 2 spots, and that doesn't include Nina because she's still in the queue. And then I am definitely leaving at the end of June so we can have the foresight of having somebody down the pike lined up somewhere in the summer to come on board. So just kind of keep that in mind. Moving on to the next item under old business, cultural districts update. So talking about the virtual world, our district designation for any of you, and I guess it might just be Chris and Dinah, Charlie, I'm not sure. We have applied, the town of Harwich has applied for cultural designation in Harwich Center and in Harwich Port. This is something we've been working on for 2 years. We were scheduled in March to have a walkthrough, which is it's the final step of getting the designation. But because of COVID, the walkthrough was canceled. So I got an email, and Cindy Williams over at the chamber, and then Charlene, the town planner, who is actually leaving, I think in the next 30 days, the 3 of us were all part of this and have been very involved in this for the last 2 years. And I got a note from Cindy last week that at some point, we have a virtual meeting scheduled. I'm still waiting to see what the date is. And I think we're going to get on a Zoom call with the Mass Cultural Council and talk through how we're going to do this final piece. Because we're kind of in limbo at the moment because we need this walkthrough. So we're trying to think creatively how this is going to happen and talk through some scenarios. I think one of which, I believe if I understood correctly, might be an actual visit with a mask on, separated, but it can't be a big group of people. It can only be, just 2 or 3 or 4 people. So they're looking at some different scenarios on how to wrap up that final piece. And then we can get the designations squared away. So that's the update. Yes, Chris?
Is that walkthrough to find out how far things are from one another, or is it because our cultural center is not open as such,
That's a good question, Chris. They're very familiar because we've been going through this for 2 years. They're really familiar with what the territory, and they've already been here. And we've already done walkthroughs already. I think this is just a final, I'm not quite sure if it's just ceremonial. I'm not quite sure, but there's one more final walkthrough that has to happen. And I don't, Cindy probably knows a little bit more about that than I do as to what this is about. But I think it's just that final walkthrough of just checking things off and finishing things. But they have actually already been here probably 2 or 3 times over the last 3 years. So they are very familiar with the territories.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
So I think it's just kind of a little bow, I think, on the end of it. Yes, Dinah?
Well, that is the final piece to the final designation. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, it's the final. So it's the final bit of the application, or because the application, everything's all in, and just to kind of sign off at the end of it required a final walkthrough. Because I think we had been, I don't want to say that we officially been approved, but it was already in certain conversations leaning that way. And I think it's just kind of a formality at the very end of it. So I could always reach out to Cindy after we have this meeting and at some point maybe invite her to come and we can update everybody a bit more. But we were just kind of waiting to see what was going to happen because everything had just been put on hold. But this was all supposed to happen in March. And then we would have had the official designations. It was looking that way. And then we would have probably had a ceremony and all these other fun things by now. So it's just a little final step. All right, any other questions? All right, so we're gonna move to new business. I am so excited. This is my exciting part. I'm so excited to share that Chris Banks has accepted the position of treasurer And I am so thankful. And Chris and I had a wonderful 2-hour training, and we'll continue to be working together in training. And we're going to kind of work together through this 2020 grant cycle. And then Chris, I'm hoping will take the lead on the 2021 with me working with her. So we're going to kind of reverse roles with the next grant cycle. But I am absolutely delighted. Chris, thank you so much. And we do need to officially accept Chris. So if somebody would like to make a motion that we approve Chris Banks as the treasurer, that would be great. Bernadette?
I move that we approve Chris Banks as the treasurer for the Harwich Cultural Council.
I'll second.
Thank you. All right. So we took the Bernadette. Charlie, I think I heard yours before Peter. So we'll take the second from Charlie. And now we're going to go around the room and aye or nay. You'll, when I call your name. So Dinah?
Aye.
Thank you. Peter?
Aye.
Thank you. Bernadette?
Aye.
Charlie?
Aye.
Sharon?
Aye.
Chris? You want to take yourself off mute? No.
Oh, now it's official. Aye.
I'm really going to make it official with a big I. So thank you very much, Chris.
Yay.
So excited. Thank you so much. All right. Next item under new business, annual report to Board of Selectmen. I had sent everybody an email because I got a note on, I think it was Monday. They're moving the reports once again. So we have been moved from November 16th to January 25th. So that means I've got a bit more time, which I actually pretty much had written the report anyway, but it still gives us a bit of time in case anything comes up in the next 2 months and I can kind of throw it into the report. So I will make sure that all of you get the report for our January meeting, and then it will go to the Board of Selectmen the Wednesday before the 25th. So whatever that is, I will make, it has to get in by that date. So I'll probably have it before then, but I have to submit it. I don't have the January calendar. So whatever the Wednesday is before the 25th, I will submit the report into the Board of Selectmen so they'll have it for their packet. And then I or any one of us can just go into their virtual meeting and just present the report. You don't have to read it, you just highlight it and take any questions that they have. So that's going to happen on the 25th of January.
January
20th. Yeah.
Oh,
20th.
Oh, it's the 20th. Okay, good. So Dinah, for the minutes, I guess, I will submit the annual report to the Board of Selectmen on or before January 20th. And then it will be presented officially at their meeting on the 25th. All right. Any questions on that? All right, moving right along, the next item is the 2021 grant selection process. I think everybody has the email. They have once again extended the deadline, and now it's December. It's mid-December. I think it's the 16th, I think. Oh, Bernadette's going to tell me. Hold on.
14th at 11:59 p.m.
All right, thank you. So December 14th, 11:59 p.m. is the new deadline. So everybody has some more time, and what that means, and Chris and I have been talking about this, what that means is everything is pushed out again. So all of the applications will come in by that deadline, and then probably within a couple of weeks, I would imagine before the holidays really start kicking in, we'll get what is called a panel book. That's what they call it. And it will be a PDF of all of the applications. We'll get it in one big document. And we'll have that to review. And we will, when we come back to our January meeting, we will begin discussing each application. We go through them one by one and have a conversation. In December, at our next meeting, we will decide how much money we want to give. We were supposed to do that at this meeting, but then they extended. So we're going to next month in December, at our December 10th meeting, we're going to have a conversation about how much money we want to put forth for the 2021 cycle. And I'm just going to make a couple of comments about that in just a second. And then in January, we'll meet, our January meeting will be nothing, we'll call the meeting to order, we'll approve our minutes, and we will go right into the discussion. And we will have to be thinking about, all right, so here's another thing to think about, because it depends on how many applications we get. We tend to have a longer meeting at that discussion meeting. And I recognize that Bernadette and Sharon are both teachers, and that might present some conflict. So I might be looking at both of you to see what's the earliest we could meet. And I'll have to check my own schedule. So we might have to either look on meeting earlier or maybe even going later. We'll kind of have to figure out how we do that. And we can make that decision next month so everybody can check their schedules. Because we tend to take, I think last year we took 2.5 hours. I know the year before we took 3 hours. And I can tell you, I was on my first year on the council. We took 2 days because there were so many applications. So it really depends on how many applications. But I would say about 3 hours is a good time to be thinking about. It's a long time. We're going to be doing it virtually. And I realize it's going to be a long time, but we'll try to we'll just kind of wait and see the number of applications to see. Having said that, here's something else I'm going to throw to the group. And I actually had talked briefly with Dinah about this earlier today. I'm really concerned about the GoToMeeting platform. I'm concerned for 2 reasons, because as everybody knows, last month I attempted to share the screen and threw the whole thing out of whack. I'm concerned about that. I have much more of a comfort level doing it in Zoom. Secondly, we are limited in our time. In fact, we have to be off today by 5:30 because we have another meeting coming behind us. And I'm not sure that I could get a block of time that allows us to do our business. So one of the things I wanted to propose, if we can get access to a Zoom room, what we would do for open meeting law is we would have to provide that link, because the public needs to know where are we meeting, and just in case they want to show up, we just would have to provide the link. And I do that on a couple of other commissions and boards that I'm on. We use Zoom. It's real easy to do. We just provide, like we would with this meeting, we provide the link and the login or the meeting ID. Just in case somebody wants to come, they can come and they would come through that link.
Sounds like a much better platform.
I agree entirely.
Yes. Yeah. Because we've got really important work to do, and I don't want to be frustrating all of us in this GoToMeeting. I mean, we can return back to it later on for our regular meetings, but for that particular meeting, my intention, because I tend to do a spreadsheet. So as we're going, whatever the amount of money is, I have a spreadsheet that counts it up as we go so that we can play around with the numbers. And it might be something that I will periodically be popping up on the screen, just so everybody has kind of an idea. Because usually we're in a room doing this and we can pass things around and I can hold things up. And so I'm going to need something that I can be able to share with everybody. Yeah. So that's kind of where I'm going. And it looks like everybody's nodding. So I think that might be what we do. Yeah, our January meeting.
Good.
All right. So Dinah, we will work on that and kind of see what we can come up with.
Yeah.
Going back to, as part of the revised timeline agenda item, next month we're going to be thinking about money, and I'm just going to throw out a couple of things for you to think about, and we'll have more of a discussion about this next month. And Chris and I have met in our 2-hour training. We were looking at our accounts. We have 2 accounts. We have the grant account that is state and town money. That's in one account. In the other account, it's what we call a gift account. So any fundraising that we've ever done, any donations that we ever have received go in what we call a gift account. By our agreement with the state and with the town, that first account has to be used for grants. And I can tell with meeting with Chris the other day, we are very comfortable in saying easily that we have 10,000. That's pretty easy. We might have in that main account, we might have as much as 11,500. And the reason is because we had 2 grants this year that aren't happening. And so that money stays in the account. So we can comfortably say 10,000. We might be able to go to 11,500, and we'll have more of a conversation about this next month. The other question, because I think Dinah had brought this up last meeting, and it has certainly been done in the past, should we choose, in our gift account, we do have roughly 3,500. I don't have the exact number in front of me. And sometimes in the past, if we get a lot of grant applications, which we probably aren't going to be able to see by the next meeting, sometimes we can dip into the gift account and say we're going to give an extra 1,000, but that's going to come from the gift account. So we can do that. But I just want to make this clear, and Chris now knows this now that she's come in as treasurer. It's going, if you choose to do that, it's going to require some very tight bookkeeping because you can't mix the funds. So what that means is, let's just hypothetically say 11,500 from the main account. Let's just say we want to take another 1,000 from the gift. So let's just say 12,500. If you decide to do that, the treasurer has to really stay on top of that extra $1,000, because Carol, those of you that know Carol Coppola, she cannot mix those two accounts. So you have to decide with that extra $1,000, you have to determine grant X, Y, and Z that totals 1,000 is going to come from here, and everybody else is going to come here. So when Chris goes and does all her bookkeeping, she really has to stay on top of this because it can't mix. So that's something I'm just going to throw out. We don't have to make a decision tonight. We can wait and everybody think about it. And just think 10,000, 11, 11,500. Do you want to dip over into the gift account? So just be thinking about that, but it will require Chris to stay really tight on that bookkeeping. So any questions about that? Chris?
Have you, in your experience, have you ever seen your group dip into that gift account?
Yes. It was the very first year that I was on the council. They had a big trip, and back when, and I think I might have shared this at the last meeting, there was a wonderful group of women that were on the Cultural Council when I joined, and they all went on trips together.
All right.
So they had made an arrangement with a travel agency to do a cultural council trip, a cultural trip. And I can't remember exactly where they all went, but all the ladies on the council at that time brought their partners or their husbands, their friends, and I can't remember how many people went on that trip. It was 40, I think. And the arrangement with the travel company was they got a full trip back. So I think it was maybe it was maybe $4,500 trip, something like that. And so they, as part of their arrangement, by meeting a certain quota, the travel agency gave them a check for roughly $4,500. And that went into the gift account. In fact, we're still riding on that money in the gift account. We're still riding on it. So that first year that I was on the council was also the time that we had a two-day meeting, because I don't recall the number off the top of my head, but we had over 50 applications. And they decided that they wanted to give a little bit more money that year because there were so many applications. So they did pull from the gift account.
Tina, are those funds in the gift account, could those be considered operational funds?
Yep.
If we had to put up a Zoom page or do whatever we had to do?
Yes, Charlie. And good question, Charlie, because the main purpose of our gift account, number one, is operational. So whenever we have our grant receptions, like when we used to do them in person, any of the refreshments we bought or any of, whatever that we might have needed for grant receptions are always charged to the gift account. So let's just say Roseanne Shapiro, who was on our council for 3 years, kind of oversaw our reception. So she would go and get the refreshments and pay for them and then get reimbursed to the gift account. So
that's our money. That's our money.
Yes, it's our money. Yes.
So if we decided, barring adding that to our grant funds, if we decided to make a contribution to a not-for-profit, we could use that money.
Yeah, and it wouldn't technically. Yeah. I hear what you're saying. I don't. Yeah, I mean, that's a good way to say it. So it is our money, the operational from the fundraising arm. It goes into that account. So yeah, I guess you could say that, although it's still within the framework of what we do. But it's
So we could use that for promotion of the cultural.
Yes.
Council.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep,
That was
absolutely.
my
You
question.
can use it for anything operational. That's its number one reason is operational.
Right.
And then we can decide after that if we want to use it in other places. Yeah.
These are basically discretionary funds.
Yes. Yes, Peter. Perfect. Perfect wording. Discretionary funds. Yep. Yep. So you can be thinking about that. And the other thing is, and I can certainly share the link with all of you, and I will just ask you to when you go in, there is kind of what I would call a back channel, I suppose. So we've got a page where everybody's going in and putting in their applications. And there is a login. And they just did this, I guess maybe 2 or 3 years ago. So you can go in via the login and have a peek at what applications are being put in. So we could, before the next meeting, just take a peek to see what kind of applications are coming in. And that might help us decide if this is the year we want to pull from that account. And it may or might, oh, you know what? And I was going to say this now that, Chris, now I just now remembered something else. The first year we did pull from the gift account, but there was also another year that we chose to do it. And it might have been my second or third year on the council. Maybe it was my second year. And we really didn't need to. Because we actually, and I think it might have been the second year that we chose to go ahead and do another 1,000 because there was so much of that money from the from that trip they did. Yeah. But we didn't have that many grants come in, and it was unfortunate because we were given like bigger money than we probably would have. So those are the things you want to think about. I mean, if we've got like 50 applicants, it might be a year that we would want to think of pulling more money over. But if you've only got 25, Dinah.
Yeah, so just time-wise, make this decision on December 10th about how much money we want to use.
Oh, I think you went out. Dinah. Yeah.
Can you hear me now?
Yes. Yes.
We have to decide on December 10th at our meeting to spend, but we will not have all the applications until the 14th.
That is true.
Okay, so however, we should have a good number of them before we vote.
Yep. We should have a good number, and at the same time, it will surprise you how many might come in the last 2 days.
Oh, it doesn't surprise me. I think that's possible, but yes.
Yeah. But I can send all of that later this evening because it's a login and you can just get in and take a peek. Just make sure you don't really, you know, you can look and you can click and look at the applications, but just be very cautious that you're not clicking on something that edits somebody's application because it's like an override. It's the administrator and we don't want to mess up anybody's application. So, but I'll send that out to everybody and we can kind of just monitor. I've already seen, I didn't look this week, but I looked last week and I think we've got, last week we had maybe 6 or 8, I think, something like that. So they're starting to come in.
Interesting.
All right, any questions? All right, so we'll decide that next month and I will definitely send that email to all of you or that login later today. Okay, the next item. So Charlie, I don't know if you attended the Mass Cultural Council webinar. Oh, Bernadette, you did. So the Mass Cultural Council is recommending, but we get to decide. Let me just make that really clear. We get to decide, but they're recommending that cultural councils consider for the year 2021. We've historically only funded program, event, those types of grants, but they are recommending for the first time ever, because they've never ever done this, that we consider operational support grants.
Yeah, I was in that
Okay.
webinar. Yeah.
Okay. So you and Bernadette and I were in there. So we can decide if that's something we want to do. We can certainly make that decision next month. But let's just, you know, we've got a bit of time here. I would be curious, Bernadette and Charlie, what your thoughts are about that as you heard the presentation.
Well, those monies would come out of the gift account, would they not?
No, they would come out of the grant account.
Oh, okay, all right.
Yep, they would come out of the grant account.
Oh, yeah, makes sense. That makes sense, but
Yep.
that just waters down the other side, so to speak.
Right. Bernadette?
Yeah, it crossed my mind to say, I wonder how many people might feel a little skittish about bothering to apply this year because of the constraints of COVID, and they look like they'll still be in the thick of it into mid-December and beyond. So maybe there'd be less applications, but knowing that, and I don't know how well that'll be publicized, knowing that now people you could possibly be getting operational help, maybe we would see more applications. It's hard to say.
Or different kinds and maybe better ones.
Clarification, what exactly, could I have an example of what would be an operational funding?
Yep. I'll give you an example, but Bernadette, go ahead. You were right in the middle of something. Go ahead.
Yeah. I think that's just the thing. We'll see where we're at on the 10th in terms of how many applications and maybe notice if or how many of them are asking for operational support. And it might help us project, well, how many more do we think might come in by the 14th, and how many of them could proportionally again now be operational or not. It may be that people won't even be aware, or they won't be asking. And as you said, we still have to determine if we want to do that. But I think having that login and having a chance to do our homework and look at what's coming in ahead of time will be helpful.
Okay. Yeah, good point. And Peter, to your question, operational support. Actually, we had, and I don't know if all of you remember this, but we have somebody this year who actually ended up asking for an extension, support for a brain injured artist. Do all of you remember that one that came in front of us? Her original proposal, and I guess this was maybe in April or May when I had a conversation with her. She intended, now she has a brain injury, so she has to be in the room, and she was going to bring a helper in to help her teach a workshop. So when we approved her application last year, we were thinking more about the workshop. We weren't really thinking about her helper. Our helper is what I would call an operational support. Yeah, so in her case, we could have said, yes, we'll help you cover this helper, because this helps her carry out her operation. So she is a very, very good example of something like that. The other thing that I'm thinking of, let's just hypothetically say we've got an artist who really just couldn't show his or her paintings and therefore didn't make the money they were expecting, and maybe they can't pay their studio rent. That's an operational expense. I mean, you know, we can always talk about whether or not we're okay. We can talk individually about any of these requests, but that could be somebody who says, well, that's an operational expense and I can't even pay for my studio because of COVID. And or somebody says, I can't afford a Zoom platform or a film crew. Like even when we had Cape Cod, the orchestra, they had to bring a film crew in. That was an operational expense. They had to take it virtually. So those types of things are operational in order to make the program happen. They're operational. Does that help?
Yes, got a better picture of what it is.
Yeah.
Does that cross over with the community development partnership or community partnership or whatever it is? Because they can apply for grants with them.
Yep.
What do they call them? Grants that they don't have to pay back, you know?
Yep.
So they can also get assistance from that if it's a rental thing of their space. So, you know, that's tricky about what operational expense we would carry versus another opportunity.
Right. Yeah, and it is a tricky thing because historically, and Sharon and Peter, you're going to be coming into it for the first time, but our number one thing that we look at when a grant comes in is what is the public benefit? So if somebody comes in with their proposal, say they're doing a program or a workshop, we're thinking as a group, well, what is the public benefit? How does this serve Harwich? Is it serving a good enough amount of people? Because we've actually declined in the past a proposal that might be serving one person. And so we're always looking for public benefit. So I guess when we're thinking operational support, we have to think, well, how is this serving Harwich? Are we helping Harwich by paying this person's rent? You know, so we have to kind of think through those questions. And it's something that we, you know, want to just think about whether or not we want to even, and we could decide that we'll do it on a case-by-case basis. Like when I think about the brain injured artist and I think about her original proposal, that was her original proposal to us. And we said, can we make it more about the workshop? Can we cover your supplies? And then you take care of the helper. That's kind of what we went back. If everybody remembers when that came in front of us, we kind of pushed her toward the supplies, you know, rather than paying the operational bit.
Well,
yeah, go ahead, Sharon.
I would just say from an education point of view that would be an accommodation that would help her to fulfill her process of what she needed to get done. It doesn't, you know, levels the playing field.
Right.
It doesn't necessarily give her an advantage over someone else. It just helps her achieve what she wants to do.
Exactly. And with her situation, just since I was using her, because of COVID, she couldn't even do the workshop. So the helper became not an issue. So then we were just trying to brainstorm what she could do. And she was actually quite frustrated. I don't know if everybody remembers us having this dialogue with her. She was very frustrated because even to tell her to go onto a Zoom platform, somebody with a brain injury, it's too much to take in. And so she asked again, can I have the helper? You know, in order to even put the workshop online, I can't do it. It's too much for me to take in. And she was even concerned about herself having to teach on a Zoom platform, because that was concerning to her as well, as to how could she could do this. And so we were just thinking, well, if the helper was there, then she could just focus on teaching and not worry about who was in the Zoom room. So she could just like set her stage up and just basically teach, and then the helper would be taking questions and things like that, so she wouldn't have to be too much into the technical bit. So any other comments or questions about that? And I don't know, do you want to think on this? I mean, Bernadette makes a very good point, because if we decide on December 10th, that only gives us 4 days to really tell people that it's a possibility. So we can either decide now.
Well, it's difficult because there's not a real clear definition of what this means. So I think if we were to put it out there, it would have to be a little clearer, and then we still have to do a case by case.
Right. Yeah, Bernadette. Oh, sorry, Bernadette, and then Dinah.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say what Chris ended up saying, that probably that's going to be a helpful phrase for this case-by-case basis, because there are nuanced differences, as you've already illustrated, between, you know, certain operational things and others. And, you know, I'm sure, and because this is my first time through too, but I'm sure it's always been a case of you look at if they're getting support from other places too. So in the discussion of just paying somebody studio rent to help them keep going on, well, I don't know if that fits as well as your other scenario.
Yeah.
But you might also be looking at, did that person look to get help from a number of places?
Right.
So case by case is probably going to make a lot of sense.
Yeah, I agree. Dinah?
I don't see it any other way. I think it has to be, of course, that's what we do. It is a case by case. And I would also say, I think we could approve the idea now. And then because that's how we operate, we do case by case, we can apply it as we see fit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think offering it so that people have some idea that it's a possibility now, good idea.
Right. Another example that's coming to my mind, and I think those of you, Chris, Dinah, Charlie, from last year, you might recall this one. the purchase of a 3D scanner from Cape Cod Makers. If you remember when that came up, we thought, oh, I don't know about that. I mean, we're kind of paying for somebody's scanner. What is the benefit? And I had to reach out to Ricky to get some clarifications on whether or not that was something we should be thinking about. And Ricky said, if you feel that them purchasing the scanner helps them deliver their public benefit, then yes. But if it's just for their personal use in their business, then no. And I don't know if you all remember that we had that conversation about the 3D scanner, and then we all decided, and actually I think Dinah, it might have been you, somebody reached out to ask them, what were your intentions with the scanner? And when they said, well, we're going to invite, they're over at the Cultural Center, we're going to be doing these things, and we're going to be doing these workshops, and we're going to be inviting people in, and they can have use of our scanner because it's not everybody has a 3D scanner. So when we heard that, we thought, well, then there's your public benefit.
Right.
And we ended up approving it.
Right.
Yeah, and
yeah, Charlie?
I think the case is this is new technology. There's a bunch of young people out there that are very excited about this, and it seemed like a good way to connect the dots for those potential students.
Exactly. Yep. So it ended up serving a great purpose, and we agreed to fund it last year, and they've already submitted and gotten their money. So, yeah.
So I would propose that we decide now about whether we're going to be willing to fund operational expenses, because otherwise I think it's unfair for us to decide that. If we decide yes on the 10th, and so many people have already applied, and they actually not a good.
I would vote no, because you really don't have enough money in that gift account to cover unforeseen potential situations where we may have to, buy some software or do something along those lines.
So Charlie, just for clarity, and I understand where the confusion is. So when we say operational support, this actually would be in the regular grant program. It wouldn't be out of our operational, or not out of our gift account.
Oh, I thought you were talking about a commingling. Okay.
Yeah, well, yeah, and I can understand where it's getting confusing, but
No, I understand. Right.
Yeah. But it's in the grant, in our standard grant program, right, and our standard grant account. Within that account, what the state is asking us to think about is within that we can, if we choose, to fund operational, like say the 3D scanner. Somebody can come up, because normally we might have said, I don't know, that doesn't fit the bill. But it's just giving us authority on a case-by-case basis to grant somebody some money for operational support, as long as it provides a public benefit. So Chris, I think that's the description that we're looking for. And Bernadette, when we post out there, we could say that for the first time, we are considering grants. I don't know, maybe we can come up with some languaging. We're considering operational support branding as long as it demonstrates a public benefit. I think that's the key. Because otherwise I think we're going to get a lot of, can you pay my rent? Can you pay my electric bill? Yeah. So, yeah.
Then we just have to decide on a case-by-case basis.
Right. So do you want to take a vote, or should we just agree by consensus that this is an okay thing to do for 2021?
Consensus.
Is anybody opposed to it? Now that we understand it, Charlie, I understood where your confusion was, but as we understand it, is everybody good with it on a case-by-case basis, provided that it shows public benefit?
Yep.
Yes.
As long as it's case by case.
Sorry.
Go ahead, Dinah.
How do we disseminate this new information? Are you on the website?
Yep, we could put it on, actually what I might do, well, Bernadette's going to put it out on social media. That's going to be our first announcement. And then what I could do is I could take our press release and just put an update to it and just ask, maybe Caleb can update press release that's on there now. You know, and I could probably send out a quick announcement to the media, to like the Chronicle and the local. Yeah.
Does Cindy, do we put anything in the chamber newsletter? I mean, not newsletter, website?
No, we don't, because I think, yeah, we don't typically, because I think, and I don't want to speak for Cindy, but I think once she opens that door up, she's got to do it for everybody. So I think my understanding is, if it's tied to the chamber in some way, I think she's willing to do it. But I think
the cultural district.
It's tricky. Yeah, it's tricky. So I think if we tied it to the cultural district, she might do it. But yeah, Dinah?
I think also it could be a public announcement on Channel 18.
Yeah, it could be. Yep. It absolutely could be.
Just like a flyer saying that this is a new provision.
Actually, that's a good point, Dinah. So can I ask you to do this? If you want to check with Caleb, I don't know if he's listening right now, because I know that they have those still images on Channel 18. We could, as you're suggesting, yeah.
I know we can do that. The question is, would you want to write up exactly what you want? And
yeah.
Just put that.
Yeah.
No, they do those public announcements all the time.
Okay. Yeah, we could do that. Just make it a PSA. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. All right, we'll do that. All right, so we're getting close here to 5:30. Oh, Sharon, go ahead.
Sorry, I just looked up on the Mass Cultural Council site there, and they were giving they give some examples if we wanted to add some examples, or just to give you an idea. It says examples of operating support, funding expenses for artist residencies, funding supplies for arts and culture program, funding ticket subsidy programs, funding for the day-to-day operations of an organization that provides arts and culture programming, funding for individual artist materials to do their work, funding for streaming platforms for virtual programming.
That's really, okay. So if you could send us that link, because I think a lot of times we've considered materials and stuff like that as part of the actual programming, but it's interesting that they're distinguishing the two. Why don't you just send me that link, or all of us, if you've got our, that way we can take a look at it. Mm-hmm. All right, and we've got a couple of minutes and we got a hard stop, everybody. I apologize, but I think we have the Conservation Commission coming behind us here.
Community preservation.
Oh, community preservation, thank you. All right, so it sounds like we have consensus on that. So we will get some languaging out via email for all of that. The one last item on the job description, I did put it under here just as a standing topic. And I just want to say, if anybody is interested in pursuing the grants coordinator, because we did kind of talk about that, I'm just going to put it out there. And you don't have to get locked into this, but if you're at least interested, it's a good time to step in, and I will work with you. Charlie, do I see your hand going up? Perfect. Good. I'll reach out to you.
Yeah, I was kind of tied up until January 1st, but I think I've got some leeway now. So
perfect. Thank you, Charlie. So I'll reach out to you, and we'll kind of see how it feels for you. And if you think, yep, this is something I want to do, then we'll do what we did for Chris. We'll kind of vote you in that position. But we'll just work together and just get a bit of training and see what you think about it.
Thank you.
All right, wonderful. Great. Okay, good. So it is 5:29. Anything else before we adjourn? All right, could I have a motion to adjourn, please?
I'll make a motion, we adjourn.
Thank you, Charlie. And Chris is seconded, Chris Banks. So roll call, motion to adjourn, yay or nay, starting with Dinah.
Yay.
Peter.
Aye.
Bernadette.
Aye.
Charlie.
Aye.
Sharon.
Aye.
Chris.
Aye.
And I'm an aye. And we are adjourning exactly at 5:30.